When Anne Brontë published The Tenant of Wildfell Hall in 1848, it was so controversial that her sister Charlotte tried to suppress its republication. Why? Because its heroine walks out on her alcoholic husband, taking her child with her, and dares to tell the truth about the damage done behind closed doors. Meanwhile, in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, the word alcohol is never mentioned outright. And yet, there's Mr. Hurst, sprawled on sofas, half asleep from food and drink, doing nothing, saying less. A comic shadow of a man. Both novels feature alcohol. But one treats it as background noise. The other treats it as a fire that burns through families. Let's explore how these two classic works approach the theme of alcoholism, and why their treatment of it reveals more than just personal vice. It reveals the power of literature to either maintain silence or break it. In Pride and Prejudice, drinking is part of the scenery. Mr. Hurst is the most visible example. A man of leisure, uninterested in anything except dinner and a good bottle. He isn't dangerous. He isn't tragic. He's just dull. Austen's depiction of this kind of man is subtle but cutting. He represents a class of gentlemen who do nothing and think even less, drifting through life under the influence of comfort, wealth, and perhaps too much wine. There are other hints as well. Lydia Bennet's wild behaviour during her elopement, her tolerance for officers drinking and gambling, reflects a kind of youthful recklessness, but it's portrayed as foolishness, not destruction. Austen's world may contain vice, but it rarely brings the house down. That's the key difference. In Austen's work, the consequences of drinking are social, not moral. A man might be boring or lazy, a woman might be silly or indiscreet, but no one suffers deeply. No one bleeds, and Brontë doesn't offer that kind of safety. In The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, alcohol is not background, it's a storm. Arthur Huntingdon begins as charming, witty, and handsome. But as the story unfolds, his drinking becomes frequent, then obsessive, then cruel. He doesn't just lose control of himself, he poisons everything around him. His marriage collapses, his friendships are toxic. His son, young and impressionable, begins to mimic his father's worst behaviour. Helen, his wife, begs him to change. He mocks her. She warns his friends. They laugh at her. And when she can no longer endure the chaos, she leaves, risking her reputation, her safety, and even custody of her child. Bronte's portrayal is brutal because it is real. She had seen what alcohol could do in her own life, and she didn't flinch. She wrote it down. She gave it to her readers unvarnished, with all its misery and rot. Where Austen nods at a gentleman's glass of wine with a raised eyebrow, Brontë smashes the glass entirely and forces us to look at the shards. It's also a matter of literary purpose. Austen writes to observe, to amuse, to gently critique. Her stories are about growth, civility, self-awareness. Mr. Hurst is a detail, Lydia is a caution, but neither is a threat. Brontë writes to expose, to demand justice, to give voice to women who have no legal power but refuse to stay silent. For her, alcohol isn't a quirk, it's a curse. And the only way to survive it is to break the rules society has written for women. Two women. Two novels. Two very different worlds. One gives us a portrait of refined neglect. The other gives us a warning soaked in truth. Alcoholism, in the end, is more than a personal failing. In Austen, it reflects a world where vice is tolerated if it's dressed in good manners. In Brontë, it becomes a test of strength, a fight for survival. And perhaps that's why The Tenant of Wildfell Hall still feels urgent, raw, and radical, even today.